This is a little wee video about floating selvages and why they are required and how we can deal with them. So there are certain weave structures in the weaving world that require floating selvages. One of them are twills. Another situation where you might require them is a weave structure called canvas weave. Canvas weave has a pardon me, sequence in it where there's two picks in the same shed. And so to be able to put two picks in the same shed and not have it pull out again, we need to have something called a floating selvage that anchors those two picks. So our weft would come out, go over this thread and go back into the same shed, and this would prevent it from pulling through. So the ideal situation for creating fabrics that have floating selvages is to build that floating selvage into the warp so that it's all part of the warp from the get-go, and then we can control the weight on this or control the take-up on this by putting a weight, hanging a weight off the floating selvage on the back of the loom, which is what I'm going to do in a few minutes. What if you are weaving away and you totally forgot to do that you didn't include two extra threads in your warp, one on one side and one on the other? This is what you do. This little fella here used to belong in this heddle. So I caught that right at the very beginning, that I didn't have a floating selvage on it. So I undid my very first bout of weaving and pulled it out of this heddle. It gets pulled out of the heddle, it got put back into the reed and tied back in, and now it floats. It doesn't ever move up or down, it just sits in the middle. When I step on different treadles, it doesn't move, everything moves around it. So that's my floating selvage. I have been known to cut a heddle. If I was weaving plain weave for a long, long time, let's just say what that situation could be. I wove 10 tea towels all in plain weave, and then I started to play with twill and I was having problems with my selvage, so I needed a floating selvage. Well, I know it sounds awfully harsh, but I have many a time just cut the heddle eye like that, taken the thread out of it, and then it will be floating again. And I know this seems a little harsh, but it's a quick and easy way to make a floating selvage. The third way is to actually take a separate piece of yarn, pin it into the front of the cloth here, run it through the reed, run it from the back, and weight it off the back with something that hangs. That means that every time you advance your warp, you have to go back, or every few times that you advance your warp, you have to go back and lengthen that thread and the weight hanging off of it. So this is my preference, is to have it built into the warp, or to cut it out of a heddle and let it exist. It's still wound into the warp. And when I go to the back, I'm going to show you how I weight it. I have a whole lot of little S-hooks in my life, and I have a lot of little tools that came with looms. You just need enough weight, just enough weight. You'll know if it's too much, and you'll know if it's too little, because if you don't have enough weight, it's sloppy and it's moving around, and I don't know how much you'd have to put on it to have too much weight, but there you go. So I'm going to put this on the back. So here it is. It's coming around there. I can pull it out on that beam there, the thread beam, so that I can isolate it. And then I just hang this off, and it sits here and lives here. Every time you advance the warp at the front, this drops down a tiny, tiny little bit, but it maintains tension on that warp thread the whole time, and I never ever have to deal with it again, which is so nice. That's why I prefer this method to hanging something off the back that constantly needs to be tended. This, you never touch them again. So I've got a floating selvage on this side. I've got a floating selvage on this side. They each have 2 little wrenches on them. This one's a little smaller than that one. It doesn't really matter. It's just enough weight to pull the slack out of your floating selvage. And your floating selvage gets slack in it because it does not have any take-up. All the other warp threads get a little bit shorter every time we put a weft pick in. But because the floating selvage doesn't have a weft pick pushing it up and pushing it down, it just wraps around it. There is no take-up on this, so that's why it gets longer. These all are getting shorter as the cloth becomes more three-dimensional. So this is a quick little trick for managing a floating selvage. Hope that helps.